Well, good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Stuart's Classic Bikes and Cars. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to have a look at the final Squish clearance. So before I get started, I seem to have mislaid my glasses somewhere. Let me get my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. Here we go. The problems of getting old. All my joints are buggered and I can't see anything without putting my glasses on. So I want to check the squish clearance. But what I want to do first is just clean the making faces up a little bit so I can get it more or less accurate without gaskets and things what the squish clearance is going to be. So just bear with me a little bit. While we get the gasket spaces cleaned up. Because I would like it to be accurate. So I'm looking at 0.8 squish clearance to 0.2, yeah, 0.8 to 1 milli. But I'd like it to be 0.8. Now the other problem is if you've got lots of gaskets and bits of goo all over the place, you can't get an accurate reading. So just let me clean this a little bit. So I'm hoping then to get it an accurate reading. I don't mind 0.05 off, but I want to get somewhere in the ballpark. Now I'm going to write everything down, because every time I strip this in between racing and rebuild it every week, I need to rebuild it without checking all the dimensions. So I've got everything written down, gasket thicknesses, etc. I can build it easily without thinking too much about what I'm doing. So that's the bottom of the barrel. More or less clean, but it's clean enough for what we want to do. Just got a brass wire brush, I'll just give it a quick tickle with that. Just put that over here for a minute out of the way. Now we need to clean that a little bit. I'm stripping this engine down after this, so it doesn't matter if I get a little bit of gasket inside the engine, but if we weren't stripping it down, let's just put something inside there to stop any foreign objects falling in. Just bear with me. Right, before I start scraping gasket material up here, which could fall inside the engine, let me just put this bit of plastic in, which will keep it cleaner. Push it down into the crankcase mount. That's it. Wind the piston down to keep everything out of the way. There we go. We just scrape round here to get any little bits of gasket off. So we get an accurate reading. I was only looking for 0.8, so Rory wants a little bit of old gasket material sticking in the way, and the reading will be out. And it's imperative that I get the right reading for what I want to be doing. Because if we have the squish clearance to 1.2, 1.5 millimetre, it defies what I'm trying to do. If you're only on a road bike, it doesn't matter. But when you're looking for the last little bit of performance out of a bike, all these 0.1s, 0.05s, they all matter. So it's important that you get all these little bits of gasket paper and old sealant off the mating faces. So when you bolt it all together, you get an accurate reading and not plus or minus a millimetre, because you've got lots of old bits of gasket in the way. So just bear with me, because if you do a job, it's best to do it once and it's right, so you've confidence in your figures you've got. Especially when you're looking at 0.01 or 0.02 or something. So let's just try and take a little bit of effort and get it right. Just polish it a little bit with a wire brush to get any remnants of old gasket material off, or old sealant. I'm not a big advocate of lots of sealant, so when I put this together, I may just lap all the faces so I can just use a smear of jointing compound without gaskets. And in the head, I'm going to put an O-ring in the head and get rid of the head gasket. Right, so that's that clean. So we'll just wind the piston up, blow off all the little bits and pieces, take the plastic out, wind the piston down again. Right, so that's the top of the crankcase and the barrel clean. So let's put them on and keep it clean. So before, we had, with the gasket, a thin gasket on either side of this barrel spacer. We had an 8.5 millimetre. So I've taken that off. I'm now going to put this new one on, which is 4.5 millimetre. So let's just place that on there. We've got no gaskets and we've got no sealant. I just want to get a measurement at the moment. I've taken the rings off as well, so there's no rings on the piston. So we'll just put this on. Just making sure it's clean. And the right way around, of course. Right, that's the... Move some of this bit of plastic out of the way. Let's put the nuts on the barrel and hold it down. And tighten it just over a hand tight to make sure there's no gaps anywhere. So we're just going to put the barrel nuts on. I'm going to replace all these nuts because all the flats on the nuts are getting worn and the spanners are slipping. So I'm going to put new studs and nuts on everything. I shall be replacing all the fasteners on the engine also, because they're all worn out. Just put these on by hand at the moment. My wife's outside knocking coconuts out of the trees at the moment. Right, that's the nuts on by hand. We'll just tighten them to just a little bit over hand tight with a spanner. Making sure you just tighten them all at the same tightness. Don't go mad and torque one down really tight. Because we're only checking the squish clearance. But it needs to be down firm but not over tight. So we'll just tighten this down. Just a little bit, nip it a little. Just so everything's compressed. And when you tighten down anything on a bike, car, or it's turbines at work, anything, it's always good practice to tighten this one, this one, this one, this one. Don't just go around and tighten or you may crack something. Do it diagonally opposite when you're tightening 4 bolts. It just makes good engineering practice. Right, so that's the engine, the barrel mounted on with the 4.5mm spacer in the bottom. So let's just turn it up now and see where the piston ends up. Ah, right, so the piston now is just, I can just feel it with my fingernail, a fraction what is that? Let me get my feeler gauges and I can just see if I can work out what we think that is. So that's the piston at the top dead centre. If you remember before, when we had the old spacer in, the 8.5 one, the piston was lower and it was about 4mm lower at the outside. Yeah, so I could get my vernier in and I can measure about 4.5, 4.3 to 4.5 from the outside of the piston to the top. But obviously now I've taken the thick spacer out and putting a 4.5 in, the piston is just slightly above the mating surface. So let's just see what that is. Right, I've got some feeler gauges here, so I'm just going to try and see. It's not the most accurate way you do it, but let me just see what we think it is. It's more than that. That's 0.18. Let's just see if I can find something what I think it is. That's 0.5, that's 0.5 millimetre. Which is about right. So it's about 0.5. We try a 0.6. That's 0.6. Yeah, so it's about 0.6. The outside of this piston is about 0.6 higher. So what we're going to do, I'm going to put the head on with plasticine and we'll just see what we think it is. When I narrow it down a little bit, I'll then start using the lead. I've got some very soft lead solder. There's more lead than tin in it. It's 60-40 tin to lead. So I'm going to be using this, but first I'm just going to use some plasticine to see how we're doing. But what I'm going to do, so we don't have any problems, I've got an old head gasket here. This head gasket measures 1.5 millimeters. That's a head gasket. So what we're going to do, let's wind that down a little bit so it's underneath the outside. Then I'm going to get some plasticine, which we used last time. This is my plasticine, which you can get from any modelling shop. Kids use it all the time. It's still pliable. So what I want to do, we've reduced it, so if we wind that up to the top, and we said it's 0.6. So if I put that on, that's 1.5. So I'm guessing that when this is on, and when the head's on, I'm going to have about 0.9 clearance. But to check it, I've got my plasticine. I'm going to squish this down. So it's about a millimetre, or 1.5. Squash is very easy, this, so we don't need to squash it that much. So we'll just put a little bit of this on top of the piston, like so. I put it in a cross shape across the top of the piston, and then if there's a low spot or a high spot, it'll stand out more. Right, so I've got that stuck on top of the piston now. Making sure it's still thick enough to get, because I'm thinking that it'll be in the 1.2, 1.3 area. Well, let's just see. So we'll put that on. Then we're going to put the head gasket on. And the head. So that's the cylinder head. What have I done with the head gasket? That's the next problem, Stuart. There we go. So we're just going to put the head gasket on. Making a mess of this. Put the head gasket on the head first. My part is stupid. You can move this piston down out of the way so the plasticine doesn't get damaged. There we go. Head on. Well, that stayed there. Put a little bit of plasticine on it, it won't take any room up. Just to stick the head gasket on with. There we go. So when you tighten the head down, tighten it just a little bit over hand time so we get a proper reading when we put the just tighten it just a little bit with the ratchet, so it's just a little bit over hand tight. and tighten them diagonally to finish off. Like so. Right, turn the engine over. Ah. So, the piston is touching the head at that. So, what we can do is just take the barrel, leave the head on at the moment, and take the barrel off. Let's not do that. I was going to do something different, but no, let's do it properly. So let's just take this head up again. Now we can see exactly what's happening. So at the moment, the head's touching the piston zone. So what we need to do is pack it off so we can get a reading. Now we can work out the squish clearance. So let's just see where we are. The other thing is, I don't think this engine was built properly last time. So another little thing I need to check. I don't think this head gasket will go under that piston. Let's take this off a minute and we'll just check. Because before, when this engine was built, the piston was 4mm down, like so. So it never come in contact with this head gasket. Just let me just check one. Let's take this barrel up again. Let's just see a minute. Before we do that, let's just leave that head gasket off. Because I'm not doing. Let's take that off. Something I should have checked actually, I didn't do. Because this engine has never run properly and never had the squish clearance checked before, this is a 144 cylinder size now, but it originally was a 125. So if somebody, I've never run this engine, so if somebody's used a 125 head gasket, it won't go over the piston. So let's just see what it looks like. Because before, the piston never used to come up more than 4mm lower than the barrel, so it never touched the head gasket's surface. So let's just do a bit more digging and we can see what we're doing, because there's something fundamentally wrong here. Right, let's just check something simple. That's the problem, look. This is a 125 cylinder head gasket, it won't go over the piston. Well, that's a lot of use, isn't it? But, so what we can do, no big deal here. So we can set the squish. Forget about the head gasket. What we have got, I've got 10 base gaskets of 0.5mm thick. So what I'm going to do, because I'm not going to use a head gasket anyhow, I just put the head gasket on, thinking it would give me a little bit more space and a bit more clearance, but not to worry, we can do it this way. These are 0.5, so if I put a 0.5 gasket on, a new gasket of 0.5mm on there, like so. Well, these gaskets are rubbish, huh? Let's try it the other way up, we'll see if it fits any better that way. There we go. Wrong way around, stupid. So, right, that's 0.5, 4.5, so that's 5mm spacer under the gasket now, under the barrel. So let's put this barrel back on. And see where we are. See, now we've dropped it by 0.5 and we say it was 0.6, I can just about feel the piston. So the piston more or less now, the outside of the piston is the same. So let's just tighten the barrel down and see if it'll turn over. With a head on. Let's have a look. We're not going to force anything, just by hand, just to get an idea of where we are with things. Not as dexterous as I used to be. There we go, that's the barrel nuts back on. Let's tighten that down a little bit. Well, that's the barrel tight. Let's put the head back on without the gasket on. And just see if it'll turn over at that. You can see how easy it is to make a mess here. Yeah, that's why you've got to check everything 2 or 3 times. Only turning things over by hand until you know your 0.8 or wherever your setting's supposed to be. It's quite easy to make a whoopsie, thinking, that'll be alright, and you don't check it properly, and next thing you know, you've got a broken engine and a bent con rod. That's why we do everything many times over to make sure that we have it right. And just take your time, there's no rush. Just take it steady. Because turning by hand, you can't bend anything. Final tightening. Just nip it by hand, we're not trying to. There's no high compressor or anything like that. Let's just see if it'll turn over now. See, it'll turn over now with that 0.5 in, so that's good. So all we've got to do now is take this cylinder head back off again. Because now we know there's clearance, but we don't know how much clearance. So, we're all good now. We didn't want a head gasket anyhow. See, I'm contemplating machining an O-ring grooving like my TZ Yamaha, all that O-rings in the cylinder head. So that's the next thing I'm thinking about doing. Got my guard dog down here. Ronald, what are you doing? Huh? Set this off. Oops, daisy, careful, Stewie. That's the cylinder head back off again. Just wind it up a little bit. It's about level. So what we need to do now is to put the plasticine on. So it won't be very thick, I'm guessing. Let's see. Get a bit of new plasticine is drying out now. put some plasticine on top of the piston. Like so. Just like making bread, rolling the plasticine. Make sure it's stuck to the top. And wind the piston down a little bit. Put the cylinder head back on now. Your cylinder head bolts need changing as well, it's getting a little bit rusty. And the heads are all starting to get the flat's worn a little bit, so let's just see what we have again. That's nicked. Turn the engine over. Set the cylinder head back up again now. Then we'll have an idea where we want to be. I hope I'm not boring you with all this head on, head off business, but you've got to check it quite intense really. So you know you're only looking at 0.8 as a finished size to 1. So you're looking at a tolerance of 0.3. And 0.1 is 4,000ths of an inch. So you can see it's quite tight. But it will make the bike go a lot better if we have a nice tight squish clearance, which will push the fuel into the burn path, so it won't waste any energy, and all the energy will be used for getting the piston to go down. Right, let's see what we've got in here. So you can see it's squashed down on the outside and it's not touched the middle. So at the just roughly, well not roughly but fairly accurately, if I measure the thickness, I'm getting vernier on, and just zero the vernier, and just rest it on top of the plasticine. Put the pointer through it onto the piston and pull that down. It's saying 1.6 there, let's see here. One 1.8. .4. So, if we say that's between 1.8 and 1.4, let's split the difference and say 1.6. And we're looking at 0.8. So what we need to do is take, let me just see what, write this down a little bit so we're not making a mess of what we're doing. So at the moment we've got between 1.8 and 1.4. So let's take an average of 1.6. And we're looking at 1.6 and we want 0.8. So the difference, if we take 0.8, we're looking at taking 0.8 out. So, just the last time to clarify what we're doing here, let's take this barrel up again. And we'll take the 0.5 spacer out. And that should leave us in the ballpark. Because at the moment it looks like we need to take 0.8, which we've got 1.6 clearance, and half of 1.6 is 0.8, which is the figure we're looking for. So if we take 0.5 out, we should leave 1.2 or thereabouts in, which will be close enough to get a reading for me to do the port timing. Let's just see. Set the barrel off. Check our Allen. Let's wind that piston down so it doesn't get damaged. This piston's no use anyhow. It's a standard cast piston, and we're going to take this off, and I'm going to use a forged racing piston later. So we'll take that 0.5 out. We'll just check that again to make sure we're correct here. hang on a minute, that's 1 millimetre, that. No, it's not. It's not 1 at all. That's 0.5. Yeah, 0.5 millimetre. So we'll take that out. Just put it there, it's been right. And we'll put this aluminium spacer, which is 4.5, back. Put the barrel back on. And this should be the last time for today, and then we'll have a good idea of where we are. I'm just waiting for some special, some key steel, square key steel to come, of 13 millimetre, and that I'm going to make a tool then for taking the forks apart. So we'll leave the engine alone after we've done this for a bit, and then we'll try putting the forks on this and finish this seat off as well. Because we've plenty to do if we want to race this bike. That's the nuts back on. That's the barrel back on again. And we'll bring this up to the top. Yeah, we're about 0.6, you see. I put that gasket in before because I wasn't sure whether it was going to touch the top of the piston. But now I know we've got clearance, we've taken the gasket out, and I know we should be okay. So let's put some plasticine on again. And this should give us a good idea of where we are. Just put a couple a little bit more on round the outside here. Make sure we get a good reading. Wind the piston down a little bit. Make sure the plasticine is thick enough to make a reading. Put the cylinder head back on. The right way around would be good. It's always to err on the safety side, so if you think it's going to be a bit tight, put a gasket in, because If it's a little bit big, at least you know it's a little bit big and you can come down to it. But if you if you keep making everything neat and too tight, you've a job to sort it out. And if you turn it over too hard, you could break something. So just take it steady, taking gaskets out a little bit at a time until you get the correct. So start big and work your way down. Or it can get expensive if you keep breaking stuff. Nip it up again. Just a little bit over hand tight. Turn the engine over. See, it's too tight now. That doesn't make any sense, eh? So what we need to do is make a gasket slightly smaller than the 0.5. Give us a little bit of... So that's the next step to do. What I need to do is make a gasket, maybe... well, that was 0.5 I've taken out. So what I want to do is put 0.2 in. So that's the next thing to do. Make a little bit of a thicker gasket. And that's where we are. So, stay with me. We'll just check this up and we'll just see if we can see anything. But I don't think we will. So with a 0.5 gasket in, we had a little bit too much clearance. But so it must be touching somewhere where I can't see where it's touching. So what we need to do is to make a bit of a thicker gasket. I'm taking the 0.5 out, but let me put take 0.5 out and put 0.2 or 0.3 in, and then we can just see what we can get it to go to. Let's have a little look though before we sign off for today. Yeah, it's touching there, look, right on the outside of that one. And there. So we've taken 0.5 out, but 0.5 was too much. That's the problem when you're using plasticine, it's not accurate enough. Because I thought using if I took that out, we'd still have 1.3, but we haven't. Because the plasticine isn't that accurate. So what we need to do is to make a thicker gasket, maybe 0.3, which is less than the 0.5, and try again. Well, that's a job for tomorrow, I think. Well, I hope you've enjoyed watching me. We'll press on with that and I'll keep you informed. Take care and keep watching.